In the 20th century, the scientific community harbored a peculiar obsession, the belief that extraordinary intelligence left a visible, physical footprint. It's the reason why a medical examiner infamously stole Albert Einstein's brain just hours after his death. But nearly 40 years before Einstein passed away, Tokyo Imperial University officially extracted and preserved the brain of Japan's most revered novelist, Natsume Soseki. It weighed exactly 1,425 grams. This procedure reflected the peak of biological determinism. The Meiji-era medical establishment was entirely convinced that the secret to exceptional intelligence was hidden in physical mass and the density of the frontal lobe's folds. They bottled his tissue to decode the biological secret of Japan's rising intellectual power. Yet the mind that once operated inside that jar had spent its life obsessing over the exact opposite of national glory. Soseki lived through the Meiji Restoration, an era defined by a relentless upward trajectory. Japan was absorbing Western technology, laying down tram lines, and mechanizing its cities at a breakneck pace. The state was expanding aggressively. Factories multiplied, the economy surged, and a newly modernized military projected power outward, feeding a massive wave of collective pride. Against this backdrop of glittering state success, Soseki wrote stories about paralyzed intellectuals, severe misanthropy, and debilitating nervous breakdowns. While the rest of the country celebrated its mechanical ascent, Japan's sharpest observer dedicated his life to documenting the deep psychological descent of the individual. The root of this perspective took hold in 1900. Sent to London as a state-sponsored scholar, Soseki was crushed by the overwhelming scale of Western civilization, triggering a severe psychological crisis. Surrounded by the ultimate endpoint of a modernized society, he realized that extreme progress did not guarantee happiness. Instead, he observed that it bred profound mutual distrust and isolation. Returning to Japan, he made a decision that baffled his peers. He abandoned a highly coveted professorship at Tokyo Imperial University. He took a job as a full-time novelist for the Asahi Shimbun newspaper. By trading elite academic theory for the mechanical reality of the printing press, he secured a direct line to the public. He actively deserted the pinnacle of the state's educational machine because he needed the freedom to dissect the psychological toll that this very machine was inflicting on everyday people. This critique crystallizes in his 1909 novel, And Then. The story follows a protagonist named Daisuke, the ultimate embodiment of Soseki's societal diagnosis. Daisuke is a high-class idler. He is highly educated, comes from a wealthy family, and refuses to get a job. He stands in stark contrast to his old friend, Hirioka, a hardened realist who has been ground down, exhausted, and pushed into deep debt by the fierce competition of the new capitalist workforce. To Daisuke, participating in this system of labor is a corruption. He views wage earning as a degrading process that forces individuals to abandon their pure ideals just to survive. He doesn't avoid work out of laziness. He is paralyzed by a distinctly modern ennui, acutely aware that any career choice will simply reduce him to a disposable cog in an expanding economic engine. The narrative forces Daisuke out of his safe paralysis when he falls deeply in love with Michio, the wife of his financially ruined friend. Pursuing her requires a completely brutal sacrifice. It means severing the financial lifeline from his wealthy father and accepting a permanent exile from respectable society. He is crushed between two identities, a human of nature, driven by true emotion, and a human of will, forced to surrender to societal constraints and capital to survive. Through this love triangle, Soseki issues a broader warning about modernity. A society that grants you the absolute freedom to choose your own path also burdens you with absolute loneliness and crushing personal responsibility. He utilized the framework of a scandalous romance to expose the hidden, agonizing cost of individual liberty in a rapidly industrializing world. Today, Soseki is often remembered as an unapproachable literary god. He is the Shakespeare of Japan and the former face of the 1,000 yen bill. But the reality was far less monumental. He was a highly sensitive, deeply stressed salaryman who navigated brutal corporate politics and suffered from severe stomach ulcers until his death at age 49. Modern tributes, like the newly opened Natsume Perseum in Kumamoto, intentionally strip away his towering authority. They highlight his extreme sweet tooth, point out his daily neuroses, and reveal his everyday struggles. This vulnerability is exactly why his work resonates so powerfully today. His questions, whether economic progress is worth sacrificing the inner self, and he asked why modern freedom breeds such isolation, mirror the exact anxieties of a generation living through Japan's lost 30 years of economic stagnation. He is experiencing a massive cultural resurgence because he never offered empty solutions or toxic positivity. Instead, he perfectly diagnosed the existential dread that defines the modern millennial experience. Which brings us back to that 1,425-gram brain, still floating in a jar of ethanol at Tokyo University today. The Meiji scientists were searching for the source of his brilliance in the wrong place. True intellect cannot be quantified by weighing physical mass or counting the folds of a frontal lobe. His actual genius was his radical empathy. He had the unique capacity to map the precise psychological trauma of a society making the ruthless transition into the modern age. While the scientific establishment attempted to bottle his mind in formaldehyde, Soseki achieved a much more permanent legacy. He successfully immortalized the modern human condition, free, anxious, and profound.